Welcome back. This is the Orange Bumper Podcast. As you can see again, I'm not Philip Dixon. I'm Burt Myers. Um, Philip is in the room this time. We saw some pictures of his little vacation that were not very PG, so we won't get into that. But no, today we got two guys I've known for a long time, really special guests. Chris Williams, the series director for Smart, and Kip Childress, the series director for the Cars Tour. I think that these two series, obviously, I'm a big part of one because I don't know that I've ever missed a Smart race, but not on purpose anyway. But these are two of the top series in your respectable divisions. I'll just go on a little bit about Chris here. I pulled up some stuff about you.
Sure.
From 95 to 05 was the VP for Action Performance, which did NASCAR trackside merchandise. From 05 to 14, you were with Fanatics, basically doing sort of the same thing. Motorsports Authentics. And then from 14 to February of 2020, you were Fanatics.
Yep.
So I know both of you guys have been involved with NASCAR your whole lives. And from February 2020 to now, you're listed as the owner of the Smart Tour and the series director.
Yeah.
Kip. Obviously, I remember your dad from Caraway back in the day.
Yeah.
I've compared him. I mean this in a positive way because I've compared Lance to what we look for in a tech man or race official is consistency.
Yeah.
And I think Russell Hackett's old saying is shoot everybody with the same gun. I've heard of other officials that worked with Russell and under Russell say that. And I've seen Lance throw somebody out over an eighth of an inch, but he wasn't biased.
Right.
But I respect it. That's one of the things I always respected about him. But anyway, I know you drove the pace car for years for Cup and worked in NASCAR. And it says for 15 years. I would have thought it's got to be more than that, right?
So off and on, right? So the last stint with NASCAR was right at 15 years.
Okay.
Then before that, there's about an 8-year gap where I wasn't working for them. But then I was with the truck series back in the 90s when it got going. So, off and on again, probably more like 25 years or so. Yeah.
That's what I thought. When I saw 15 years, I'm like, I know it's more than that. Anyway, all of these, well, let me say this about the Cars Tour. Obviously, the big shift when 2023, when Dale Jr., Jeff Burt, and Kevin Harvick and Trackhouse came in and tried to revive it, and they've done a great job. All the races can be seen on Flow. I told them before we got started here that we got to be careful because we could be sitting here for hours and hours and hours talking about old race stories.
Oh, yeah.
The different, we'll just call them stories. But I know what's cool, I think, about the Cars Tour and the Smart Tour is like I said, I know more behind the scenes about the Smart Tour than I do the Cars Tour, but I know that scheduling wise that you two work together closely. You were best friends with Earnhardt. You're tight with Harvick, and now Harvick's involved. So I think it's really cool how it's kind of come full circle. But I don't know. Just open this up, Chris. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about how Smart, from what was it, 89, 90-ish to 04.
Yeah.
And then it kind of went away when the NASCAR, Southern Modified Racing didn't go away, but Smart went away.
Yeah.
And then in 2020.
I'll just go right into it. So I was holding a steering wheel running a backup car over to the stadium. Everybody knows it was y'all's backup car. And I just wanted to do that. And, just got to talking in the circles and stuff just about business and, having fun and, what we could do. You and Buzzy, to be honest with you, kind of said, hey, you ever thought about doing something, reviving the Smart Tour? And I said, hadn't gave it much thought. So I think y'all were having a meeting at Puddin's, actually during the pandemic, and had a bunch of the owners and stuff over there. And you and Buzzy's like, come over here and just listen. And so we sit there and listen to all the drivers. To be honest with you, it's more about, why the car counts wasn't, 9 or 10 when it ended, what was the issues going forward. If we're all going to do this, how do you get everybody involved in racing? And so y'all laid out about 10 or 12 things, and I was still in the back listening. And finally, somebody brought it up, says, well, who do you think would, help lead it? And Buzzy said, well, I got a guy. And I'm like, he's going to go ahead and call me up there, which he did. And so I kind of listened to all of the issues and stuff. And, basically I took that list and said, give me a month or two and work on it. And y'all all agreed. I think the second time we met at Hoosiers with Freeman and those guys. But I took those 2 months to really call the racetracks and just try to understand how they made money, how they operated, how much of the purse come from the back gate to the grandstand. And I learned a lot about tires and different things, which everybody knows. It's no secret. I don't make any money off tires. I'm one of the only series that don't, and everybody says I'm an idiot for doing it. But also, it helps drive the modified owners and the teams to the track so they're not spending as much on tires. And we all know when you get there, that's the most expensive thing you got at the racetrack. And so I took that list, called a couple of the tracks that I knew, Nick and them guys at South Boston, because I represented them at Pocono for so many years. And, they all had a disdain trust for me just because of the monies and stuff that we had paid all the racetracks and the souvenir days. Somebody asked me the other day, said, how much money did you make? $3.6 billion in the 38 years at trackside. It's a lot of money. And so never lost a dime. So it's pretty impressive. And, so once they found out that I was involved and I may help this lead, and all the other stuff came involved. How do we get there? What tracks are going to be involved? Darren was the first one to raise his hand because he's a modified guy anyway, and Freeman was kind of pushing me from the back because he always had that lust for modified racing, and so I had a lot of good help, and I decided to do it. I think for the modified world, it was the best thing to happen. Not just because I'm at the helm. It's not nothing to do with that. It's just a platform for the showcase the modifieds because they're sexy. I mean, they're one sexy race car. And when you ever drove one, you've ever sat in one, you've ever been to a racetrack and feel the thunder, it's been really good. And the progression of the tour is leaps and bounds. Cars Tour, they've done an extremely great job. I talk to those guys a lot, Kip, and we would love to run together more. But when you start talking about purses and you start talking about parking, I mean, even at Wilkesboro, it's such a challenge. We want to run together more, but it's a challenge to the racetracks to pull it off. And you got to have major sponsorship and stuff to do it. But we do love running with them when we can. But there's not a lot of tracks in the South that's going to house their pro late models, their late models, and our modifieds, so it's been a fun trip. That's kind of a quick, deal of how we've got here. It'll be fun to kind of see how it progresses forward.
I agree. Just to touch a little bit on that is the cool thing about it is where it started to where it is now, because I know when it started, the key was how do we get cars?
Yeah.
Because that was the struggle in the Southern Modifieds from when Smart went away. And when the NASCAR Southern Weather Modified Tour came in, it was great, and we had a lot of cars, and then it kind of faded off.
Yeah.
So everybody's big question is why? Why do we not have cars? And from where we were to where we are now, a lot of things have changed, but I think it's still a work in progress. But at the same time, I think where I see it going and where it is now is awesome.
Yeah,
So,
and behind us, I mean, the one thing that's pushing all of us to get where we're at is our sponsors, and Citrusafe and everybody else. But Pace-O-Matic has done a lot, and Mike and Karma, they love racing, and I don't think they know a lot about racing until now,
Yeah.
And so it's pretty cool to see them engaged in, how to progress the series further and what we can do to make it go further. And so that's when you got a sponsor behind you like that, it helps tremendously.
Yeah. Well, we know it's about money. It's always about the money.
It's 100%.
And it's just like
money.
with Tommy and them. We try to get all the exposure we can for Citrusafe. But at the same time, if Tommy and his brand and his family didn't love racing, they wouldn't continue to do what they do.
100%.
So that's key.
The good thing about it, and we're all in it together, but if you love what you're doing in racing, you're going to try to make it work. But you're also going to take care of that sponsor, because there's no more loyal brand in racing than the sponsors that's there because they want to be there.
Right. I agree. All right, Kip, it's your turn. I'll be honest. My heart's always been open wheel.
Right.
I've never really paid that much attention to I've run some late model stuff, but I've never really paid much attention to fender cars just because our family's always been involved with modifieds and open wheel. And we stay, we forgot to send out the memo about turning your phones off.
Yeah, that's bad.
Unless that's a
I
big
can't even get it
sponsor
off. Actually, it is.
Oh, well, here, I'll answer it.
Yeah, you might want to answer that one.
Anyway, I'll just be blunt. I've never really paid much attention to the car store. I had never paid much attention. Whenever in 2023, when the shift happened and everything you guys got going on now, I'm like, holy cow. So the stamp you guys have made just in the last few years, and I know it was bigger than what I saw because I wasn't in that circle.
Sure.
But man, talk about like in the last several years where kind of the same as Chris, like where the transition happened to make this thing explode like it did.
Yeah. So you know, when Dale and Kevin and Jeff and Justin purchased the tour at the beginning of 23, I wasn't involved yet. I was still working for NASCAR in the Cup Garage. So I was watching it from afar, but you know, when a lot of times, and I think the vast majority of the folks that are in that Cup Garage will tell you that when you're not at the racetrack, because you are there so often, there's a lot of times you put racing away. And so, you know, I would watch when I knew it was a bigger event, or, you know, I'd go back and watch highlights, or you'd hear about what may have happened. So I'd go back and watch then, but I still wasn't fully invested in watching in a car store race a lot. And about halfway through the 23 season, after the guys that had bought the tour and they came and said, "Hey, look, there's an opportunity here. You know, would you ever consider doing something different?" Well, at the time, you know, I was in the Cup Garage. You know, that I'd gotten to a point that I'd been working for in NASCAR, and not only that, I had probably, I would consider, the coolest job on Sundays is driving the pace car. Yeah. Except when you get hit in the bumper when somebody's mad, right?
Right.
Fortunately, that didn't happen a lot. But, but then I had to go back and remind myself, you know, I would tell all the guys that work for me, you know, if you ever have an opportunity that comes your way, at least investigate it, because you never know when it might be something that's going to be better for you, for your family, for the situation. And it's not always about money, right? It's that is a time where money is not the 100%, you know, end all be all what you're doing. It has a lot to do with, you know, getting some time back at home. Mm-hmm. You know, after being on the road for, you know, 25 years or so, it's to be able to be back at home. You know, after, and obviously I did take the position, but the one thing I would tell Dale is the bad thing about this is, or what would have made it better if it would have happened 20 years ago. Yeah. You know, I've got, you know, two daughters, one that's 20, one that's 26, and now I have a grandbaby here. So I'm able to spend more time with all of them now, which is great. But so the Cars tour, you know, when Jack McNelly had the tour, and, you know, I believe it got started in 2014 or so is when he kind of really got going with it. And they had their slowdown during the COVID, you know, time as well. And, but Jack did a really, really good job of trying to keep what was the old Hooters Pro Cup, mm-hmm. keep it up and going. When the Pro Cup car kind of went away, because it was a car that was purpose built for that one series, it became evident that they needed to find a car that was, you know, more available, you know, and so, and to be able to tap into, you know, as they would visit racetracks, to be able to have that local guy come and run with the guys that mm-hmm. were touring. So he got that up and going. And then, you know, Jack was, for those that know Jack, no spring chicken. He was getting on up there in age, and, you know, he had shared his concern with a number of folks about, you know, what is going to happen with this tour when I get to a point that I either don't want to do it anymore or can't. And so in steps the foursome that bought the series. And so, you know, adding those four names to the, you know, to what was already a great series helped it springboard a little bit, right? So at the end of 23, Solid Rock Carriers was our sponsor, and they were coming to the end of what their contract stated. So in steps Z-Max, you know, Marcus Smith and the whole folks, all the group from Speedway Motorsports, you know, they came on and wanted to be a part of what we were doing. Sound Gear with, you know, the Swallets family, you know, William was running with us some and trying to make a name for himself and use us as a springboard. And so to be able to get, you know, Z-Max and Sound Gear in, it came at a great time. All of that happened at the time that, we were going through negotiations with Flow. And to be able to have all of our races on Flow, as you guys know, it's tremendous. People, and it's helped Flow for sure, right? So it's gained them subscribers, but it helps all the folks who follow us. They know right where to go. They know that they know that they can go after the fact. Like you said, I'm the same way. We were talking about it earlier. You get home from a race and you're still charged up, and,
Yeah.
and so you pull up and watch the replay. I mean, we do it obviously for different reasons than what a driver does or a competitor does. I go back and try to see if there are things that we could have done better in our process. And I think that, we all look at game day film. That's kind of, what that is. And I'll even go back and look at, we were in Caraway next, this coming Tuesday or Wednesday. And so I'll probably, over the weekend, pull up last year's race to be able to watch it. We had some challenges during that race, and so we want to make sure that we put our best foot forward. But to talk about just how much this has grown, I don't know that we've fully seen, what the potential is yet. And so, the one thing we've told our teams is that we want to make sure that we do it within the footprint that we've already got. We don't want to. Everybody's worried about the growth, meaning regionally or nationally. We want to make sure that our racers can still go to our races. And because, like the modified tour, a lot of our guys are blue collar workers. They've got their 9-to-5 jobs. And so we want to make sure that we're, within that 5-6 hours from where we call, I guess, Charlotte, the Mooresville area, kind of our hub. So, we tiptoed a little bit on the fringe of that window, went down to Cordele, and we've got some interest from, other racetracks that are right on the fringe of that as well. Quite a bit of interest from tracks that are beyond that we're not ready for yet. But you never know as this thing does gain traction. I remember back in the 80s when I was following my dad around the racetrack, the Xfinity Series now was the old Sportsman Series back at the short tracks. And when that was getting going, and I'm sure that the anxiousness of what that's going to do to that level of racing was there too. So it'll be interesting to see in the years to come the path that we go down to keep putting our brand, our drivers' teams, even our officials in front of the right eyes.
Yeah, it's, to me, obviously, like I said, we have modifieds. We grew up in modifieds. Modified racing is what we do. But I guess the pattern I've seen, and we're looking into it with Slate, is I think that there's no negative that can come out of getting a young kid experiencing a modified. My dad told us growing up, if you can drive a modified, you can drive anything.
Car control.
Just because of the horsepower to weight ratio, the agility.
Yep.
And I noticed, like I've explained to Slate before, when you're late model racing and the guy in front of you wiggles, you close the gap. In modified racing, when that guy wiggles, you drive up beside him. And so that experience helps. But that being said, the trend is got to get them in the Cars Tour, to me. And where I see the Cars Tour is Cup, Xfinity, Truck, ARCA, Cars Tour. That's where I put Cars Tour in my mind. Now, I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Hey, we want to be a rung on the ladder, and we tell folks that all the time. If we can help someone, take that next step.
But on your ladder, that's the top rung. You know what I'm saying?
It
in
is.
The big picture, I didn't mean that as like
No.
you were down here, but to me, in late model racing, Cars Tour is the cream of the crop.
So-
And that's why we want to put Slate in a position where he can be that driver that goes to the next step.
Yeah. So maybe there's two ladders, right? And we're perfectly fine with being on the lower rung of the ladder to help people springboard. But we've got so many different types of drivers, right? We've got guys like Slate, and we've got Carson Lofton now that's made the move from the modified into the late model. We've got, folks that are trying to use us to help them climb that ladder. We've also got folks that come back and run with us that have been running late models for years.
Yeah.
And want to come back and have a place to still go tour racing, but not do it at a level that they're, breaking the bank.
Yeah.
So we love being the home for all of that. Smart's got that too.
Same,
you've got guys that are getting in at an early age.
Yeah.
Slate, and you've got guys that are still trying to climb that ladder. I think I get to be around Tommy Baldwin quite a bit, so I think of Luke quite often there. And he's another great example of that. There's a group of those guys that we see, whether when they're at a racetrack, then they don't have to be racing, but we always kind of see there's a group of guys, and we know that 10 years from now, they're going to be in something making headlines somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think
fun to watch.
I think what you're saying is exactly right. I think the modified world right now is a landing spot after Legends, because they're getting into something. They're used to the short wheelbase. They're used to those type of tracks and different things, and it's become. We got 8 rookies this year in a smart modified, and they're young and they're good. Every one of them's good. I mean, we have one in second place right now in the points with Hardwick. But Luke is doing extremely well. He's a year past the rookie side, but those other guys, I mean, they're extremely good, and we become that landing place. And even when Carson was talking about going to the Cars Tour, I mean, a lot of people don't know that I've talked to Barry and had a lot of conversation with those guys, because I thought it was a stepping stone, to the next level, and you got to have that. And with the talent and stuff that's in our series and the talent stuff that's with the cars, I think it's a progression step to the right direction for those guys to learn car control, different types of tracks, different type of racing momentum in the Cars Tour, where modified is a little bit different, but it teaches them a lot of attributes to progress. And I think it's actually working out for the lot of guys that's trying to come that way.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I think you're seeing it firsthand with Carson right now, just because he's in a car that's a great race car, but he's not burning the tracks up yet. There is a learning curve, because I know the race probably slows down for him, because you're coming out of that type of car into a late model, but now you're in a car that's underpowered versus a modified, less tire versus a modified, and a whole lot more body work that's around you. Obviously, right? You're sitting higher up off the ground. It's got to be. I can't imagine what the feel is like. But still, you see the small gains. You see, suddenly he finds himself, being able to navigate traffic a little better, or being able to know when to maybe use that bumper when he needs to use it.
Yeah.
But he's also out there making a name for himself, and he's not making a bad name for himself.
Right.
He's earning a whole lot of respect on the racetrack, and that's going to go along.
The thing that I always noticed is my mind, when I got out of a modified into a late model, my mind was moving faster than my surroundings.
Yep.
Things happen so much faster in a modified. And correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it seems like that maybe Carson doesn't have the raw speed, but he has the racecraft.
I think the speed's
that
there.
accurate?
I think he's just not gotten to the point where he's got comfortable with it maybe being under him.
It seems like to me that he doesn't always start towards the front, but he always ends up in the front.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you. So qualifying for our guys, man,
Oh gosh,
it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can start about 17th or 20th and only be off by a 10th or less.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just absolutely insane. But the qualifying I think will come.
Yeah,
and
sure.
and he, those guys. I mean, it's a blink of an eye from being at the front to the middle to the back. But where we are seeing him really, really make strides is during the course of the race, and all of a sudden you look down and you're like, man, where'd that 20?
Where'd he come from? Right.
And when they can do that, and he's not, booting people out of the way, and he's out there making passes.
Yeah.
That's what they're looking for,
Yeah.
and they're getting it. They are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the racecraft. I think is comes from modifieds. The only difference in modifieds, and it's been this way since I can remember, the difference in modifieds and Cars Tour or Smart Tour and Cars Tour, from where let's take the names off of them. Let's just call them modifieds and late models.
Yeah.
In the South, there's 50 modifieds. In the South, there's 500 late models. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the biggest thing. It's always been a hurdle for modifieds. Is unless you raced at Bowman Gray Stadium, where else did you see a modified?
Yeah.
So anybody that ever started a Southern Modified Tour had to start from scratch,
Yeah.
because you had to figure out, all right, what can we do to not just pull these guys, but pull other guys that maybe want to start a series, or a guy that used to run and has a car sitting there but doesn't really want to run Bowman Gray. So now what do I do with it? And that's why I say Smart's a work in progress, because I don't know that it's always a work in progress, but I don't know the modifieds will ever jump that hurdle, because Bowman Gray's always had the monopoly for 75 years.
Oh yeah.
That you go to Bowman Gray on Saturday nights, it's $12 to get in. It's 30 minutes from anywhere. Starts at 8, you're home at 11 o'clock. So they've got the monopoly on it. So that's what's always been hard for Southern Modified Racing. But the fact that We averaged 25 cars last year. We're going to tracks that maybe we haven't been to, or tracks that we haven't been to in years.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the attention and the exposure
Yeah.
that Smart has gotten, not just through the drivers and the teams and you, but through Pace-O-Matic and the sponsors,
Yeah.
Citrusafe, people that are being involved that see the potential there. Not that it was easy, but when you got Dale Jr. and Kevin Harvick's name on the top of the title,
Doesn't hurt.
It helps, it helps a lot.
but that to me is and I feel like I can speak on this from a veteran, from driving modifieds and growing up in racing, and now I have a 16-year-old son that we're looking at. Hey, where can we put him? Cars Tour.
Yeah.
Cars Tour. So I think that to me, this is a perfect storm. Because for me anyway, because I love modifieds. There's nothing more fun to drive than a modified. And then the publicity and the excitement of the Cars Tour with everything you guys got going on too. And you know, one of y'all's races was on Fox too, right?
Yeah, so when we raced at Wilkesboro during the All-Star weekend, it was just perfect storm, right? You had all the cameras, you had all the trucks, all the people that are there, and we have a 25% owner of the Cars Tour that's part of the broadcast team. And so he pitched the idea, and I won't say it was easy. There was a whole lot of behind-the-scenes work that had to go on to make that happen. But to be able to take advantage of the fact that they were there, and then try to instill a little bit of the fear of God in our guys to go out there and put on a great show.
Yeah.
We did good for a lap and a half. But once
Modified race showed up.
I think once we got that behind us, everybody's nerves kind of
Yeah.
settled
Yeah.
down, and
Yeah.
we did okay. We had a great show, and so but it was really cool to see. How I think the folks from Fox, how they reacted to us.
Yeah.
Fortunately for me, being a part of the NASCAR world for as long as I have, live TV wasn't completely foreign.
Mm-hmm.
We try to run our flow shows like it's live TV. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because you don't have hard ins, hard outs. You don't have even though we do have commercials, the commercial breaks are even different on live TV. And we had a production director that sat with us in race control, and we're working with him. And so there are a lot of things that go on that fans don't really understand. And even to that point, there are, some folks within the industry that don't truly understand. We get asked all the time, well, when's your next race on Fox? I'm like, yeah, we don't know. I mean, it's like, to be able to have that one race there was just, again, perfect storm. They're there. Keep the switch turned on a little longer and be able to broadcast it there.
Yeah.
So, and thankful for Flow too, because, we pride ourselves on all of our races being on Flow. They were extremely, supportive of all this. And so, they worked it out to where they could simulcast the race. And then you have Dale Jr. and Kevin both up in the booth calling the show too with Eric. And it was, so it was just a good show all the way around, I think, and just a good opportunity.
Yeah. It's, anytime, obviously being at Wilkesboro elevated it. But yeah, it's cool that, to me, the where it's gone from what all of us, what we remember, to where we are now, right? And we all talk about how, as racers, social media can be the worst or it can be the best. And social media keeps things going and keeps things hot. When I was growing up, if my dad got into it with somebody on the racetrack, by the time Thursday got around, it's like, oh yeah, that's right. You kind of blow it off. And now the social media keeps it hot.
Keeps it churned. Yeah.
Keeps it churned up. But at the same time, social media is what we use as a platform to elevate what we have as tours, as a team, sponsors and whatnot. So speaking of what we used to have versus what we have now, I'm going to start with you, Chris, just because I've heard a bunch.
Yeah.
I want to, and it's going to be tough, but I want you to try to think of one. Maybe we'll throw two in there if you got some good ones. But I want to know. I want the people to know a good story, an old racing story, whether it involves Earnhardt or something that happened. And obviously, I don't want you to say something that's going to get you in trouble.
Well, it's funny.
I'm telling them the day I quit racing, I'm going to write a book, because there's a lot of stuff I'd love to tell that I can't. So if you can kind of help us narrow it down to one, if possible.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm working on my life story right now.
Okay.
So, and we've been working on it for the last few months, and we're doing the 60 hours, sitting at a video with people, bringing people in to talk about these stories. So they're kind of fresh on my mind.
All right.
And I can tell you, I mean, I could tell you hunting stories. I can tell you Neil Bonnet stories, Tim Richmond stories, because I represented all of them. It's just not Earnhardt. Rusty Wallace and I have tremendous amount of stories. But, you know, I'll tell you one good one, and it tells you a lot about Dale. So Dale and Madison then was working on the Napa sponsorship. And they're from Atlanta, and we were in Atlanta. And Mattis asked me on Friday, he said, let's go over here to Napa headquarters. And he said, let's sell this deal. Let's get it done so we can get, you know, Hornaday in the car and so on and so on. And I never left trackside. I mean, all the years I was there, I was there, first one there, last one to leave pretty much. And so I was like, all right. So I left my buddy Gary Clem in charge, and me and Mattis go over to Napa headquarters. We're there about 2 hours, and all of a sudden we get a phone call. And it was like 5:36, and I wasn't planning on going back to the racetrack. And I was like, yeah. He said, Earnhardt. Earnhardt always announced himself. Earnhardt. I know who it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Who?
Where you at? I'm up Napa. Who you with? Mattis. He's like, get back to the track. I'm like, oh, they should be about close. He's need to talk to you. I was like, what is going on? So Mattis goes to the hotel. I go back to the condo. I go in there, and Dale's sitting out looking out of the racetrack, and Teresa's, he's over there, and I'm like, what is going on? So I go in there and I sit down, and he says, Chris, I've known you a long time. I'm like, yeah, I knew I was in trouble
What'd I
right
do?
there. Yeah, I knew it was over. Who'd you leave in charge today? I said, Gary. He said, Gary who? I said, Gary Clem. You like him? Yeah. You trust him? Yeah. He said, let me ask you a question. I'm probably 60% of the whole market in NASCAR. He said, would I be the first trailers closed out of the 6 that I have? And I'm like, no. I was like, I'm in trouble. And I was like, he said, well, let me ask you this. He said, what's your average transaction? I said, yeah, it's like $54. And he said, so if there was X amount of people in a grandstand, you would think you would get so many percentage of that. I said, well, you'd get at least 20-some% or more. At 60, it's your fault. But not all, they shop during the day. And he said, I understand all that math. He said, just tell me what you think you would have got. I said, I don't know, maybe, if it's 400 people in there, we probably could get about $800, $900. And he says, what would that have paid for? I'm like, man, what is he going? And I said, well, it paid for per diem, hotel. It'd go towards something. And he said, well, y'all shut down before anybody. I was like, before anybody? He said, well, Petty's was open. Petty's trailer was open. Well, what's Petty's percentage right now of what's going on? I said, probably about 5% at that point. And he said, so Gary won't be closing no more. I was like, okay. He says, I said, by the way, I said, how many people's in a grandstand? He said, 542. He counted every single person in that grandstand. And I was like, boy, this is going to be rough. He said, get out of here. He said, you learned your lesson today. He says, and next time, make sure that you tell Mattis you can't go until it's a time you can go during the week, not on race weekend.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot of different lessons from Dale. and we've been telling all these stories, which really brings them to light. And there's many of them. And I'll tell you another one because it's just so funny. This is how much he paid attention. So in Talladega, we had 6 trailers. He'd drive in sometimes in the morning or late at night or whatever, and we'd still be open. And so he rides by the trailer in the infield going to the coach compound. Well, we had private channels back then, and he'd say, hey, Williams, private channel. So I turn over to the private channel, and he says, hey, got a problem. I was like, okay, you need me to come in? He said, no. He said, I want you to go in the infield, tell me the first thing you see on that trailer in the infield. I'm like, what is he doing? So I take the mule, and I go in there. Sure enough, I'm sitting there looking, and I realized what it was. One of our employees had a Pepsi can sitting on the back counter, and he was a Coke driver.
Wrong brand.
So I drive over to the coach, and I was like, hey. He said, figured it out? I said, yes, sir. He said, what are you doing to me? I said, what are you doing to me? He said, what do you mean? I said, well, they got to pay for it. You get it all for free. I said, these guys need some
there
Coke
you go.
like everybody else. Next day, we had a pallet of
A pallet of Coke.
But he paid attention that much to everything that was going on.
Well, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I'm in office with 2 of them every day. Yeah. Man, they're the same.
All right, so what you got?
Yeah. So you asked that, and again been fortunate enough to work in our sport for more than half my life. But my dad was an official when I was born, right? So I was following him to the racetrack when I was a kid, and there's always this one story that sticks in my head. We would go to Bristol, and back when Bristol actually had grass in the infield, the trucks would park outside, the teams would bring their stuff in with either in a box truck or they'd roll down the bank in turn two, and it's like just absolutely crazy. So I was there one time. I couldn't have been 8 or 9 years old, and so I obviously wasn't working, but I was running around the pits. I heard you guys talking in another podcast about being, you're Gary's boy.
Yeah.
All right, so I was always Lance's boy. I have an autograph book at home, and it actually says on the spine of the book, Lance's boy, because nobody would have known who Kip was. So, but we're at Bristol, and they had the teams are working on their car. And here I go walking by Richard Childress's car. And so it's always been kind of, everybody asked the question. I got asked 100 times when I went up to visit Newport last week. How are you and Richard related, or are you related? And my standard answer for my whole life's been not nearly close enough.
Yeah.
So, but I walk up on Richard's car, and it's his last year of driving full time. The car was just solid white with a chrome number 3 on the side. You remember, he didn't put his name up on the door top. It was on the door seal. Mm-hmm. So he and one other guy was working on the car up under the hood. I mean, they were elbows deep in this thing. I don't know what they were working on. Didn't care. I crawl up in that race car, get in the driver's seat, put the steering wheel on the steering column, put his helmet on and the bubble goggles, and put his seatbelts on tight for my little 8-9-year-old.
Yeah, right.
So I'm in there and I'm acting like I'm driving. Well, T. Taylor Warren, who was a photographer in the Cup Garage forever, took the deciding photo for the very first Daytona 500, right? The photo, finished photo. So T. Taylor's been around the garage forever, and he sees me in the car and recognizes me for being Lance's boy, and takes a few pictures of me and sends them to Dad. And so it was just, I've still got them. They're cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Memory.
And especially when you see Childress on the door.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm sitting in that car. Well, it comes time. They finish what they're doing. Hood goes down, and Richard got to get out. Time to get out. So I get out of that car, and he gets in that thing and puts his seatbelts on, and they're up here. I was never allowed back in that race car again. I mean, but that's those are times growing up in the sport, man, and it was there's nothing like it. And whether you're at Bristol or you're running around the stadium, or I can remember going to Greenville Pickens. I tell Junior this all the time. He talks about running around the racetracks, as a kid when his dad was racing, and I'm like, there's no telling how many times we probably ran around together and don't know it.
Don't know it, yeah.
Just don't realize.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember, you'd meet a kid and you were instant friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And y'all would hang out, and we'd run back. Martinsville, back when they had the grass on either side of that place, we'd run back and forth, and we'd be covered in mud because that road that would connect the two grassy areas was just mud cover. I remember being at Martinsville the time that Richie and Jeff got together, and
I was there in
the checker. I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
And, man, it's just being a kid in our sport. I just think those memories probably stick in my head more so these days than any time that I had working. And not that everything that all the cool stuff that I've been able to do, growing up and even coming up in our sport, and then had it topped off by being able to drive the pace car in front of the best drivers in the world.
Nothing better.
When I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do, and to be able to do that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously times have changed, but you can't put a price on that on that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
You can't.
Like it. And I think as you're talking, and my mind's just kind of rolling here, like I think that when you hit that, when you have kids and you got grandkids, you said, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have that yet. I'm not ready for that yet. But I think when you have kids, it changes how you think and how you respond, how you react. So it makes you think about the good old days, right?
Yeah.
We watch Andy Griffith every day. Stays on our TV in our bedroom 24/7. Andy Griffith. So I think about the old school, and I think we're all old school.
Oh, yeah.
But we've had talks about.
Oh, yeah.
So I think when you think about how it used to be, And I can remember whenever they had the modified race at North Wilkesboro and the cup race was the next day, same pit pass got you in.
Yeah.
You just walked up and down pit road. There was no security, hot passes,
Right.
security guards that tell you, you can't come in this area. Dude, we didn't think anything about it.
No.
We didn't think anything about it.
Are you kidding me? My dad was an official. I walked around the place like I owned the joint.
Yeah.
Everywhere I went.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the cool stuff that I'd like for people. That's why I ask y'all about old stories, right? I want people to know that we call it a family, okay? And when you hear family, we're a family. I got on to Matt Dillner one day. This was after there was some kind of conflict at a smart race. I don't even remember what happened.
Really? There was a conflict?
Right. And Matt Dillner at the end of the meeting talked about this is a family. And my first response was, is it? But then it hit me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's family members that I don't get along with, but I still love them.
Yeah.
And I still respect them. And they're still a big part of my life.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we are in racing. Is we are a family. Yeah. Good, bad, or ugly, we're a family.
Yeah.
And it's I've said for years, me and Tim Brown are not buddies, but I respect what Tim Brown puts into his race car. And he says the same thing about me. Me and Tim Brown are not on each other's Christmas card list. We're not going to go out and get dinner. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, he respects me and I respect him because of what we've given to this, to the modified
That's right.
to the sport. And so when you think about that scenario, we are a family.
Yeah.
I've known Tim Brown for, my gosh, 30 years
Yeah.
almost. So I think that's the cool stuff. I want to tell a story too. It reminds me of Roy Trantham. Do you remember?
I remember Roy.
You remember Roy Trantham? Okay, so this was a life lesson, and you're talking about learning lessons from Earnhardt. And you telling that story reminds me of the story I'm getting ready to tell you. Roy was one of the most patient people I've ever met. He was a genius. Okay, and you telling that story kind of made me think about what Roy did to me. Mm-hmm. When me and Roy first met, just to give you a little history, Roy raced back in the day at Hickory and Greenville Pickens, and Roy was great. So when Roy he left for a while, he came back, and him and Mark Moorfield gotten involved, and they were helping us with our motor program. Roy's the one that made the connection with us with Yates to get the Ford motors.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, this was like 20 years ago, so I was my demeanor was a little different. So I wasn't as calm and as patient as maybe as I can be now. But anyway, Roy would call me. And the funny thing is I found out later, he already knew the answer. He already knew the results. But he would call me on Sunday right after lunch. And it would be a Southern Welland Tour race or something. And Roy was helping to fund our teams. And he said, how'd you do last night? Finished sixth. Well, Burt, what happened? I said, well, Stagger grew up and such got in my way and we got turned around. And he said, man, well, you keep digging. You'll get it. Right? The next week, how'd you do, Burt? Finished fourth. What happened? Well, such was in the line in front of me and then we pit and the lug nut fell off and whatever the story might be. He said, man, you just hang in there. You're going to get it. So about like the third or fourth week of these same type conversations, and I'm telling him, coming up with these excuses of why we didn't win. And then about the fifth week, he says, how'd you do? And I tell him, and he says, well, Burt, do you think we need more horsepower? Now I'm getting spun out, right? Because I know we don't need more horsepower. And he says, I said, no, I don't guess. Well, do we need new shocks? Would that help? No, I don't know. Why? He said, well, can I say something without you getting upset? I said, yeah. He said, as long as you have an excuse, you'll never get to the root of the problem. Now, Roy wanted to tell me that week one, but he knew if he did, I'd fire off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be receptive to it, and I'd get pissed. Instead, it took him 3 to 4 weeks to prime me up to get his point across where I today live by that.
Yeah.
So when you talk about lessons with Earnhardt, he could have said, Chris, go down there and get that Pepsi can off that darn hauler.
He could have, but
what did he do?
He
made it where you could understand it
I
without
could
you
see
getting
it
mad.
and understand
you
it.
go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Hey,
And so that when you telling that story reminded me of Roy, but I live by that today. I tell it to Slade, I tell it to all my kids, I tell it to my brother, I tell it to anybody that I run into. If you have an excuse, you'll never get to the root of the problem. There are no problems. There's only solutions.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that's my cool story.
Yeah, that's a good story.
About Roy.
Hey, so two things on that. Number one, I think that generation that is ahead of us, right? They wanted you to think about it. They didn't want to come in there and immediately. David Hoots, I've known David, and know he's part of the Smart Tour.
Yeah.
David has been a huge mentor for me over the years. I mean, we were next door neighbors growing up. He worked for my dad when Dad was an official, so I've known David literally my whole life. And there are still times, we get together about every other Monday or whenever I can make sure that I'm back in the Winston area on Mondays. And so, but he would do that. He'd ask you 100 questions get you to come to the answer, and you're like, holy crap! Now
he still does.
I get it.
He still does it today.
I get it.
Does
Right.
that, Senior did that.
Yeah.
Dale and Kelly do that now,
Yeah.
and then so, and you talking about excuses. I had a wrestling coach in high school, Mike Lambros, one of the greatest men I ever knew. He would always ask us after a wrestling match, what do you think happened here? What do you think happened there? His big thing there was, there's a difference between reasons and excuses. You come at me with excuses and you're not going to be happy with the outcome you're going to get back from me, which generally meant either 100 up, down. But reasons aren't legit, but you learn from your reasons, right? And a reason is different than the excuse. But man, that just, I'm like you. I think about stuff like that all the time.
Yeah. Well, you got to think too. Today, these kids, it's right here.
Yeah, that's right.
Right here. There's no patience. There's no.
Yeah, they've got it all to fingertips.
It's right here in front.
Right there.
This world we live in.
Yep.
And what we started talking about Andy Griffith. Somebody said, I saw a thing on a social media thing, and it said, stop trying to get your kids to act like Opie Taylor. Because those days are gone.
Yeah.
The world that Opie lived in is gone.
Right.
Yeah.
So don't try to get your kids to live like Opie Taylor. Now, I still try. There's a few episodes that come on, the one where Opie doesn't win the gold medal and he pouts on the couch, and I'm like, Slick, get in here. I want to smack him around a little bit.
You talking about this? Dale used to stay at my house, and he'd put the coach behind the house, and every day he'd come in on like a Thursday, and we'd hunt on Friday or whatever. But he would always have time to watch TV. He watched Opie and he watched Andy Griffith, to the point he would sit on my couch and say the parts of every single person.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
The same thing. And you think about everybody that has Opie and Andy Griffith, the character, how they teach, how they move, how they manage, and how they lead. It's not bad. It's not a bad.
Yeah, the sad thing is,
That's right.
not just that generation, but the generation that's almost gone now. It makes me sad because me and my wife we joke about this. I love old people. And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but I love that older, like 70, my dad's age now, okay, 75. I love just watching them and listening to them.
Listening.
Yeah.
Because once that generation's gone, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's gone. But anyway, so the big thing that I think there's been a lot of table talk since me and Danny Bone and Philip had talked about what we wanted to see moving forward. And I know there's been some talk. So I'm going to give you my breakdown. And I think me and you talked about this, is road course. Okay. So I'm hoping that since the table talk the chatter is getting a little louder, that maybe one day before I retire, I'm going to get to run a road course race in a modified. So in my mind, I started talking about this and working on this, and then we talked about, the money and financially and the marketing and the partnerships to make it happen. But I think that we talked about Dominion. Now I'm going to give a breakdown. This is Burt's breakdown. Okay. So don't, this is just my opinion. But this is just how I feel like, and we'll talk about the late models too in just a minute, but I'm speaking just on modifieds to start with.
Sure.
So if we went to Dominion, and it could be a one-day show, we could call it the whatever 100. We'll just say Dominion 100 just for sake of arguments. The Dominion 100 weekend. We run 25 laps on the road course. You run 75 laps on the oval. Same day. So we come in that morning. We get 1 hour of road course practice and that determines your qualifying order, your starting positions. But you can redraw the top 6 if you wanted to. Use the same car, 2-speed transmission only, same gear. Okay. Now, could you test and figure out that one gear is better than another gear and all that? Absolutely. But if you say, all right, this is the gear we're going to run, it will suit the oval and it'll suit the road course. We talked about years ago about out kicking your coverage.
That's right.
Because Smart doesn't have 20 officials up and down pit road. Nope. So that's one way to mandate tech.
Yep.
Okay. You could say to keep people, and we talked about this years ago, in my mind, and I think I'm fortunate enough that when my mom and dad had Tri-County years ago and growing up at Bowman Gray, I know the marketing side, I know the procedure side, and I know the racer side because I've been involved with a lot of it. So I told Chris, I said, what you have to think about in my mind whenever you approach a scenario like this is what reasons are guys going to give you for not coming? Okay, transmission would be
number one.
Transmission is number one. So we say 2-speed only. Everybody has to run a 2-speed transmission. The other thing is well, Johnny's team has a big budget, and they're going to build a car especially for a road course.
Change front rocker, a few other things.
So if we say no,
you
can't change shocks and springs.
That's right.
You got to leave the car just like it is. Now, here's one difference that could help you on the road course, but still minimize out kicking your coverage.
Yep.
Our maximum left side percentage is 56%.
That's correct.
Okay. We run 5.5 offset wheels on the left and 4-inch offset on the right. If you flip flop those wheels, you're going to get closer to 50%. So let's just say, for sake of argument, 54%. So you could say minimum left side weight is 54%. You get 4 new tires for the road course. Now, everybody knows on the Smart Tour, we run 20s on the left, which is a 26-inch tire. We run 30s on the right, which is a 27-inch tire. And the reason we do that is because we want 3 inches of stagger.
That's right.
If you get 4 new tires for the road course, but you put the 20s on the front and the 30s on the rear, then your rear tires are going to be the same size. So let's just say 0 stagger for sake of argument. You don't have to worry about getting your stagger straightened out. So you get, once you run the road course, you get 3 new tires for the oval because you're going to use your same scuffed left front and then put on 3 tires to run a 75-lap race on the oval. You can have 2 winners, 2 victory lanes, and 2 trophies. But the average finish, like Bowman Gray does, if I finish 1st and 10th, that's an 11. If I've got the best average finish, I get first place points and first place money. Now, here's the other thing about the logistics of this whole thing. As a fan, there are no stands around the racetrack at Dominion to watch
That's right.
the race. Now, if Flo has a camera in that end and Flo has a camera in that end, and you're sitting in the grandstands, well, guess what Dominion has?
Big screen.
They got a big jumbotron in the infield. So Flo could have the cameras. You can still see them.
Yeah.
You can still see them. And guess what else we also have at our expense per Bryson Brothers?
Yeah.
Is a drone.
Drone. Yeah.
So fans can come in that day, buy a ticket, sit in the grandstands, hear the race cars on the oval, see bits and pieces of them on the oval, but watch them on the big screen.
Yeah.
Then they still got a ticket to come in to stay in that seat to watch the oval that night.
Yeah.
Now, I know some other stuff has been talked about since me and Danny Ball and Philip had that conversation about maybe doing something together with Modifieds and the Cars Tour. That's logistics that I'm not key on because I don't know the late model procedures and I don't know how exactly that would work together. But that's just Burt's. I didn't get to expand that day we talked about it. So now I've expanded. And I think the reason, and a lot of this stuff right here, fans don't even know about, right?
You just told them all. We're all on camera.
I know. But my point to that is I know there's other people listening that can help make this happen.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Or say, all right, well, you said this, but what about this? And those are things that maybe we haven't thought about yet because sometimes something has to happen to learn how not to make it happen. So anyway, who wants to, because I know y'all talked about it. Have you talked about it?
Not to the point where we're going to say we're going to do it, but
No,
at the end of the day, I think Kip's like I am. You have to take every opportunity as an opportunity, and you have to vet it no matter what. I'll just quickly kind of go through where you ran 3 laps or so the day you was testing up there
Yes.
at 20 just to see how it was, and you immediately knew gear wasn't going to happen, RPM, XXX. And so, I mean, I went around and talked to a lot of the teams, and, not knowing exactly what you laid out, that was some of the concerns. What are you going to do for transmission? Make sure they don't touch the rockers, and make sure they don't touch the shocks and whatever. And then, just run 30s all the way around. Well, it really don't work, only because you're spending more money on tires and other things. And so I think you've really thought this through from some of the conversations that I've had over the last few years. Now, I mean, this. Kip doesn't. I talked to VIR and we was going to look at running something there, but I don't think for the weekend that we're trying to do, I think that Dominion would probably be a place that could run, a road course and an oval either a day before or day of, depending on how you put the program together. Plus, the couple sponsors I have in that area.
Right. Well, it's a big market. And
a
two,
huge
one thing I didn't mention is you can see I-95
Yeah.
from the grandstands. And also think about where we are geographically to Dominion versus the northern teams.
Oh, yeah.
I think you get a lot of response from the northern teams.
Yeah.
Too.
And there's a lot of people, since we've been vetting it, that would like to challenge themselves to do something of that nature, as long as there's not a huge advantage, working with the car. But I think with you running the next day on an oval, there's only going to be limited stuff you can do anyway. We've talked to Steve Britt at Dominion. He's willing to do something of that nature. And so I think that it would be a pretty cool weekend to do. Now, is it a spiff, or is it something that's a gadget for them to come and watch? Sure. How long will it last? How will the race be? Because for us, it's about longevity. How do we do it and continue to do it better? No different than the Cars Tour. So we would have to take a look at every bit of it. We'd definitely have to have a test session somewhere up there. Maybe we do the test session before we race in September, with a couple of people come in on Friday night. Steve did say that there is some viewing places other than the grandstand. I mean, it's a great idea because they have a great restaurant and they have a great facility, and you can watch up at the hotel and see them coming, down the S's in the backstretch. So there is some blind spots that you would have to have a drone, or you would have to have a camera for them to see. So I think it's doable. The one thing that we, as this tour, try to do is not spend money. I mean, that's the one thing that we all have to look at each and every time. And, just jumping a little bit, I mean, y'all kind of hit on places to run. I mean, we've had Nashville, we had Winchester call me to run Winchester with a modified. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
I mean, we've had so many calls of people that want to run. Everybody knows I've been talking to Pensacola. I mean, it's probably going to happen. I mean, we've already agreed that it will. We just don't know when. And so we're going to go do that. But the first thing is to do that. I'm not sure with the 25 cars that's coming each and every week that I'm not going to have to do something with Monaco, Tri-Track, or somebody else, so we, can put a big deal together.
Yeah.
Because you want the car count to be there. You want people to be excited about it. You don't want to travel 8 hours or whatever, and you don't want to put on a road course when half the team says, I'm not going to do it, or, but it has to be a points race, of course, right? And so we have to look at all that, and I'm open to it. And I mean, you start down this path and, got to be a great doubleheader with the Cars Tour. Mm-hmm. But, again, as we talked about that before, Cars Tour has, certain structure and things they have to do. They have the pros that they have to deal with as well. Will they be a part of it? And at the same time, would you run on the track at the same time? The modifieds don't line up with the deal, but you go to Daytona and the other cars don't line up neither with IMSA and Daytona prototypes and everything else. So I think it's all interesng.
I just wanted to light the firecracker today.
Do I?
All I was doing today was lighting the firecracker.
This has been burning for 4 years.
It has. It's got a long fuse on it.
This has been burning
it's got a long
for 4
fuse
years.
on it.
And, I'm open as long as it makes sense. We're not spending a lot of money. And, there's sponsorship behind it from the standpoint the tracks benefit from it. And the fans do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you guys have been talking about this for a while now, and it just recently got presented to me, and I talked to one team about it, and their hair instantly lit on fire. I think
Good way in a good way or a bad way?
Yeah, not very good.
Not good. Okay.
I think that our before I came on board. I think that our group may have participated in a test just because Dominion is so. It's already on our schedules, right? I think that there was some sort of a late model test, but I'm not 100% certain on that. I just, I know that from, back during my time at NASCAR when I was working with the K&N series, the East Series ran a race at Lime Rock, and I remember taking the modifieds up there to be a part of a doubleheader up there, and everything that had to, not only with the race cars, the racetrack they added a chicane in one part of the track.
You'd have to do that at Dominion too.
Oh, yeah.
Down the
So
front.
there are certain areas that you're carrying so much speed,
Yep.
and one part of Lime Rock, you climb a hill and you get to the top of the hill and you leave the earth for a
I've
second
seen that.
before you come
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah, I've seen that.
so we there's a lot. I remember the going out there for the first modified practice at Lime Rock, and all the guys coming back in because they couldn't see through the air cleaner to see the right front tire.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there are all those challenges that you uncover as you do that, right? The one thing from a stock car standpoint that and I know same for a modified to an extent, and that's why you're talking about using the same car for both venues or both configurations is to eliminate the purpose built car for a road course. Mm-hmm. I don't know honestly how well our cars turn to the right if you have a car that's dialed in for an oval.
Yeah.
And especially an oval like Dominion, faster, high grip, high load racetrack. I don't know that, how well that car is now going to be on a flat track turning right.
Yeah.
And transmissions come into play. Now, we don't have 2-speed transmissions in late models, but,
Right.
So they would, gearing may be a little different for them, and they would climb through they'd go through all the gears.
Yeah.
And I've not been around the road course at Dominion either.
Burt has.
So to know what some of the low speed corners are, getting down to, second or even first, and then trying to climb back up to fourth. So, I'm with you. I think that it's all intriguing. Any time that you can do something new that might gain the interest of a fan, you may have a fan that's a road course fan. All I watch are road courses, and all of a sudden, if there's a modified or a late model stock car on this road course where there's normally, Porsches and Miatas running around this thing, and these loud race cars are now out there, that may be intriguing.
Yeah.
You hear that all the time, especially with a cup car now when they go to certain places and, going down to Mexico and how loud those cars were. Now the fans were just drawn into that. Modified fits that to a T. So, the biggest thing would be, just the overall cost of it. Think about flow and the cost they would have to incur as well, because their cameras are cabled. So now all of a sudden, and I don't know the infrastructure there for the road course. They may have fiber running all around that place where they just tie into it.
I don't know about that.
I didn't ask that question yesterday.
Yeah, so that's that's something that would have to take into account too, because they would want to make sure that while I'm sure there are camera locations for the oval that would work for the road course, there are probably some low lying areas that that they wouldn't be able to see. We ran the K&N West out at Miller Motorsports Park out in Utah. They had the whole place. There was fiber running all around that place. Camera location, set the camera down, set up the scaffold, plug right in, you're good to go.
Well, Dominion may be that facility.
Dominion is
Dominion's
top
pretty.
notch. They
Steve's
are.
got
They
it.
are.
It's pretty awesome.
And another variable too that I think about is we talk about modifieds and then Cars Tour and that stepping stone. Well, when you get into Xfinity trucks and
You're running plenty of road courses now.
running
Yeah.
road courses. So to me, that would just be a little bit more intriguing if you had that mix. And I know modifieds have done road course races at Watkins Glen and stuff like that. So to be that. I know you, Chris, to be that guy to bring it back. That's why I wanted
I said, if I can look
turn
at
the
it.
flame up a little bit.
Well, I've already turned it up.
Turned
I
the
mean,
flame
I've
up
already
a
talked to
little
VIR last year. I've already visited them twice. Me and Steve
I think
had.
here's my thing, and like I said, I don't want to focus just on the modifieds, but it's just because I don't know much about the logistics of. But I know this: a modified is not designed to turn right.
How did it turn when you tested?
Well, that's what I was going to say. There's two right-handers that are pretty tight. Okay. And just by switching the wheels left to right to get the left side percentage closer to 50-50 is not going to be ideal. but everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, it's true.
Everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah.
Is a 2-speed transmission ideal for a road course? Absolutely not. But if everybody has the same gear and the same transmission,
Yeah.
everybody's in the same boat.
And we'd have to put a chicane on that
You
drag
definitely have
strip.
to put a chicane on that front stretch. So what I did is funny because you know that long drag strip
Oh, yeah.
right there, right? When I got to 7,800, I just had to hold my foot at 7,800. So if you put some kind of chicane in there,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is if you ran the road course that morning and then came and ran the oval that night, I was kind of noticing there's a lot of runoff areas. Like if you do run off the track, you shouldn't tear your car up.
Yeah.
And if you did tear your car up and had to go to a backup car, or you had to change something broke and you had to change it, you just start in the rear of the oval.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I just wanted to. We've talked about it, but I wanted
So
to.
running a double
if
to
anybody out
beat-
there that can help make this happen, call one of these guys or me or somebody, and also look, I'd like to see the response
Yeah.
in our comments and. If fans, because if the fans don't want to see it, there's no need to do it.
Right.
So fans, if you want to see this,
Let us know.
Let us know.
Yeah.
I want to touch on one thing too. We talked about, and I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah, that's
we got an email about All American.
Yeah.
I've had 100 fans say, "Are y'all running Friday night or not?"
Yeah.
So can you elaborate? at this
I guess
point or
I'm
no?
just going to have to blurt it out, I guess, because I've been waiting.
Well, no. If you don't know,
No,
for
no,
sure
no.
yet,
I
then,
know all the details.
You hear? Yeah, it's just one of these.
So
you heard it here first.
I'll tell you what
know?
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll leave the person's name out that's taking it over. That'll
Okay.
be a better way to do it.
Well, the question is are the modifieds going to
Yeah.
be at All American
100%.
on Friday night,
Yeah,
Labor Day weekend?
they are. They're
Okay, you
100%
heard it here, fans.
going. I don't need to get into details other than I had a phone call, said don't change the date.
Okay.
Working with the racetrack.
I know the team's got an email.
Well,
but I've had a lot
I
of
had to
fans
let
in it
y'all
without-
know for travel.
Yeah, well, without talking to you,
Yeah.
and actually somebody asked me yesterday,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it was David Hill. I
Yeah.
saw David Hill at SRI. He said, "We're running." I saw the email.
He
I
sent
said,
me
"You know
he
what?
sent me a text. I was like,
know,
yeah.
I know, and we talked about
Yeah.
that. We've
Yeah.
been
I guess
told on paper.
I guess
yes,
because that person hasn't announced it yet,
Okay,
which he was going
so
to last week, but the track
that's
owner
what I
was on
said, and I said,
vacation.
"You know what,
Right.
David?
It's
In the
coming.
morning, I'm going to find out." So, fans, you heard it here first. We are running. They don't need details. They just
No.
need to know we are running Labor Day weekend, Friday
Yeah.
night
Yeah.
at All American Speedway. I call it Coastal Plains. I still call it.
I'll call it everything.
You may be able to call it Coastal Plains in the future too.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next night we're in Carteret County. What are the dates? I know it's Labor Day weekend. Do you know the dates?
Off
I
the
don't.
top
It's
of my
Labor
head,
Day weekend.
I think 29th and 30th. I think when y'all rush Florence, whatever that day is.
Friday.
Friday.
I see. Yeah, right.
You like I am. I'm
I
gonna be
just
there
know
race
it's the
weekend.
weekend
Friday,
after
yeah.
Bowman Gray. So
Yeah,
that's how
that's
I keep
correct.
up with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, speaking of Bowman Gray, this weekend we have twin 25s, and then we'll take our break and we'll go to Caraway for the Smart
Yeah.
Smart Tour race July 5th.
Yep.
At Caraway.
Good car count coming.
Yeah,
Got a
it
lot of
should
new
be.
people.
Well, see, the thing about it is the guys that don't run Bowman Gray, they're itching.
Yeah.
They're itching. They're on jack stands.
Oh, it's a
They're ready
good
to
car
race.
count. We
So,
got a lot of new cars, some from up north coming.
good.
We got a
I
great car count.
saw. Is it Fifield? Melissa Fifield's
Yep.
coming back and making another start or making her first start on the Smart
Yeah,
Tour.
she we had a conversation yesterday.
Well, good.
She's coming
And-
back. She's been through a lot. I'm glad that she's recovering. And anybody that's her story. I'll let her tell her story.
Yeah.
But have a fondness for anybody that goes through what she's went through, and now that she can get back in a race car is a great story. I'm glad she's coming to Caraway and taking it slow this year before she takes off next year. So I won't get into what those races are, but we had a conversation about that. Kyle Cisco's coming from up north. There's a couple of more coming from up north.
That was going to come. I tried
know.
to tease that.
Well, he told me not to say nothing. so
Well,
I kept-
his
I
crew
kept-
chief, I think, and
couldn't
some
make
of his team members are on vacation that weekend.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I thought Sap was coming.
But there's still a few more that's coming from up there. And, we have some of the ones that kind of pick and choose, like Buzzy and Gershon are supposed to be coming. So, the car count's going to be big.
Yeah.
The thing I would like to see, I haven't seen it yet, and I don't know if you've been on a track with the
I've
curve.
seen it. I haven't been there. But
Well, I've
seen
heard
it.
some people try to run on it, and it ain't good.
It ain't good. Okay.
It ain't good. So, but then again, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to run off the corner on it? They're trying to run on the corner. The ones that's running on the corner, the car pushes.
So the biggest thing I'm taking away from this is we better be full of gas.
Well,
Is that what you're telling
we got
me?
a time limit at Caraway. It's an hour and a half. Keep that in mind.
Okay.
We learned that lesson 3 years ago. We're still trying to finish that.
All right, I do want to. Is there anything else I want to? There was a couple housekeeping things I've got to
Do
take
what you
care
gotta
of. Is
do.
there anything else you guys
Well, I mean, so our next show is at Caraway also, right? So we run
Wednesday, right?
Wednesday show on the second, pros and late models, and they're going to have their Legends of Bandoleros there too. But that's always a big one for us. It's our really our only midweek show there. It's the only time we have what we consider to be a 1 day show. So we'll get there, bright and early and start sweating on Wednesday morning. And we all know that it's always hot there at Caraway.
It is.
Looks like the forecast is going to be a little cooler, but
89 now.
yeah, well,
Instead of 95.
probably not far from that, but chance of afternoon, weather's going to
Yeah,
pop up.
always.
So we'll dodge a little bit of that. But our guys are, the last race was Dominion, so we've had now 2 weekends off, and they'll be itching to get back at it too. We're just we're getting ready to hit a stretch of races here. Well, I say that after Caraway, our late model stocks actually take about a month off. We try to let them either take vacation or they're a part of the Virginia Triple Crown. They'll run South Boston this weekend. They'll run Langley at the Hampton Heat as they get ready for their the big show at Martinsville. So there's a lot of pivotal races going on right now. Points are real tight for us. Between Connor Hall driving that Junior Motorsports car and Landon Lewis in the KHI car, but not far behind them you've got Cade Brown. In a Marcus Richmond car, and Minnie Tyrell's making another charge after his win at Dominion. So I would say that just past the halfway point of our season, points are still wide open. And so the pros have been off for a little bit. We took them off the calendar at Dominion. We've actually added a race for them now to kind of make up the difference there. They'll run on July 12th. At Hickory, it'll be a standalone for them. They'll get to be the showcase for that one.
Yeah.
And it's the last race before the big 50,000 to win for the late models, the 30,000 win for the pros. That'll come up at Hickory, so it'll be a good testing opportunity for those pros to be able to get some laps around Hickory before we go back there. And like I said, that 50 grand, 30 grand to win for both of those divisions at Hickory is going to be big. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah. And ours just real simple. We go to Caraway next week. I mean, everybody's been talking about. We had a big money race we were trying to do at Dominion midweek. We worked with the travel group of Virginia. We're probably going to do that next year. They really want us to have a midweek race somewhere around 4th of July. So I think it's probably going to happen next year. State's behind it. A couple of the election individuals are behind it. So it's going to be pretty big. We'll probably do that with Tri-Track and Monaco. We're working out some details of how to make the two series more equal when we do those combinations. But we take about about 6 weeks off after this. We don't run much during the August just because of the stadium, but also because of the heat.
Yeah.
It's really bad. Yeah. Then we roll off like 7 out of 8 weeks. So, it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to the back end of the schedule. Looking forward to running with Cars Tour at
Wilkesboro.
Everybody, we're going to have the same thing as last year. We're going to have 36 to 40 some cars. Everybody's already talking about it.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a good show. Tri-County is going to be great, but it's going to be fun. We got a few announcements coming up I can't make right now with some sponsors coming on tour. Really cool. Williams Auction Company's doing ours at Caraway. We're going to announce in the next 2 days. I can do that. I can announce.
Well,
that.
you just did it.
Well, I said that. I got 3 more coming. Hey, I got 3 more coming, but I figured I'd throw that one in. Since
Edit.
But no, it's going extremely well, and looking forward to the back half of the season.
Yeah. Well, it's been cool having you guys on. Anytime we can sit and bench race. Number one, it's free. Number two, it's fun.
Yeah.
I love hearing the old stories. Like I said, if we weren't careful, we could sit here all day and talk about this stuff. But
that's a fact.
I want to take the opportunity on my end. We always obviously Citrusafe is stickers and stuff in the background. I want to take the opportunity to thank some of our partners. Citrusafe, but Pinnacle Financial Partners came on board with us with the Cup Ride and with the Modified. Cool for them this weekend. About 25 to 30 of their employees are coming and are going to sit on the patio behind the flag stand. So a lot of those is first time out, first time they've ever been. So it's a cool weekend for Pinnacle. Hopefully we can put it in victory lane for them. I want to thank or recognize Choice Tire and Automotive, Laughlin Concrete, Universal Technical Institute, which is NASCAR Institute, which does our motors, Triangle Fitness, Racing Electronics, Kevin Hughes, who also supports
Oh, absolutely.
the Smart Tour, Winston-Salem State University, MJ Graphics, Ideal Landscaping, Greg Butcher Trucking, Bryson Brothers Aerial Solutions, who's partners with us and with Slate, and also does the drone for everything. And also, don't forget, I see Devin's got it on the screen. I didn't know if you were going to pop it up or not. Don't forget to go to racefangear.com. Get all your Burt Myers, Slate Myers, Citrusafe. I'm looking at it. Is there anything else I'm missing on there? As he's rolling up through there, you can get some of the die-cast stuff we talked about. It's hot, 95 degrees, so you can get your ladies' tank top. You can get Citrusafe grill cleaner stuff, supplies, and whatnot. So, yeah, don't forget to go there. You can also get a lot of that stuff at the racetrack whenever we have the pit parties at the Smart Races and then after the race at Bowman Gray. But, yeah, this has been fun. I'm glad I got you guys on here, and maybe we'll let Philip participate again next week. We'll see. I'm just kidding. No, we have to do this. So normally it's me and Philip.
Yeah.
But we've got 3 mics. And
Yeah.
so and being I have personal relationships with you guys. I wanted to be the one to
Yeah, man, it's been, and I'm glad you did, and it's been fun. I'm with you. We could sit here for hours, and the good part about things like this, though, you can always have a part 2, and so and any time that we can come down here and shoot the breeze, maybe as we wrap the season up, we can
Wilkesboro's
talk
coming.
about that.
Yeah. Well, now that I turned the flame up one notch on you on the road course. So, like I said, anybody out there is listening, and fans' response, think about it this way: the more fans that respond and promote and say, yeah, it puts more pressure on you. So I'm encouraging fans to.
Well, y'all do put a lot of pressure. I mean, Wake, they're like, we want to go to Wake. I'm like, do you really want to go to Wake? And I talked to those guys. And
You put on a hell of a show at Wake. I'll just go ahead and say that right now.
we will.
Well, I haven't been there since they paved it.
Well,
we went there years
man.
ago.
We try to
fast.
work it out for this year.
Yeah.
And they want to run on Saturday. They normally run on Friday, but the tour
We ran
races
on
is
Saturday.
Saturday. I didn't have a hole this year.
Yeah.
With the schedule next year, which I'm saying a lot. Southside's, probably going to have a date for us next year to be the first race back.
We've been talking to them too. I mean, there's a lot of great racing. There's a lot of potential out there. Yes, sir.
It's a heck of a problem to have.
Newport's back, and
you went up there the other
went
night.
up there this past
I've talked
weekend
to
and
them
talked
already.
to them, and with Southside, man. When they called me up, Pulaski County, have they talked to you yet?
We talking about doing something.
So
in
it's
Pulaski next
to
year.
see these tracks now that are kind of being rejuvenated, revived. It's we're gonna have the biggest problem we're gonna have is trying to get all these venues in the schedules that we that we need to keep.
That's
right?
correct.
And so there will be somebody on the outside looking in, and so and that's a great problem to have.
Yeah. I mean, how refreshing that short track racing is.
It's good.
Is alive and well because go rewind 10 years ago, we might all question what's happening next. And I think it's pretty obvious right now with the modifieds and with late models and with all these tracks.
Yep. Got to have places to race. That's right.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. I know it's heartwarming for me and for you guys too, because this is what we do.
Yeah.
This is not,
It's what we all live.
we it's cliche. It sounds cliche, but this is not a hobby.
No.
This is what we do.
Right.
It's a lifestyle for us. So to know that things are going well is nice. It's nice to know. So
I agree.
anyway, thanks for tuning in. Thank you guys again for coming on.
Thank you.
And come out to Caraway on Wednesday.
Yep.
The 3rd.
Second.
The 2nd. Excuse me, the
Yep.
2nd.
I do know that date.
Okay, July 2nd, Wednesday, July 2nd,
5th.
the Cars Tour race at Caraway, and July 5th
Yep.
at Caraway for
Yep.
the mods, Smart Tour. So,
Yep.
all right, thank you for tuning in.
Thanks.